Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Rangers and Islanders make a very rare deal, and it involves Carson Soucy, who the Rangers trade to the Islanders in exchange for a 2026 third-round pick. And that was what the Rangers traded Vancouver when they got him at last year's deadline. Now, at that point, obviously, Soucy wasn't going to be a free agent like he's going to be this time around. So, yeah, as far as the return goes, I'm fine with it. I mean, I think the acquisition of Soucy in the first place wasn't really a great one by the Rangers, but at least they essentially got their third round pick back. Now, technically, when it's all said and done, may it be a little bit later in the third round in 2026 than or if they had kept it in 2025, yes. But basically, for about, let's say, a little bit less than a full season of Carson Soucy. Like, he ends up playing 62 games. Obviously, he missed some time as well. I mean, but that trade happened last year on March 6th, whereas this one's on January 26th. So a little less than a full season of Carson Soucy. And he, to describe his Ranger career, he was not very good, and that's kind of putting it mildly, when he was acquired last season from the Canucks. And the Rangers at that point really had no defensive structure at all. He himself had not been playing that well for Vancouver. Soucy's one of those guys where certain years, Soucy has done a nice job, and then some others not so much. And last season, come out of Vancouver and the Rangers, it was not a good season for him. I think even by the end, I think he might have been a healthy scratch for a game or two. Not sure if it was termed a healthy scratch or if they actually said it was injured, but Soucy, was someone that I think Ranger fans were not exactly looking forward to come this 25-26 season. What was noticeable last year, he's just painfully slow. Never a guy that's really provided a whole lot of offense. Surprisingly, 1 year with Seattle in 21-22 put up 10 goals, 11 assists, and 21 points in 64 games, which is kind of remarkable when you think about it. Other than that, it's really always been very low on the offensive totals. He's more of a defensive defenseman. Can kill penalties. But yeah, last year was really a disaster to the point where it was like, it was a trade that kind of left you scratching your head a little bit, just in terms of, kind of evaluation of talent in a way, right? Like, philosophically is one thing, and the Rangers technically did have a chance to maybe at that point. They weren't out of it, but they still could have been. Hey, look, they did sell. It was kind of that same day, I think what happened, if I remember correctly, was the Rangers traded Riley Smith to Vegas, and then I think used the pick that they got in the Riley Smith deal and flipped it over in the Carson Soucy trade. I'm pretty sure something along those lines would happen. But Carson Soucy did a nice job at the start of this season. It wasn't amazing, but it was pretty good and much better than it had been the year before, where he mostly was paired with Will Borgen, but a little bit with Braden Schneider as well. You'd see him kind of either in the second pair or third pair. Again, like, he probably, played a decent amount penalty kill wise. He wasn't their top penalty killer, but he was someone that, really a combination of Gavrikov, Borgen, Schneider, and Soucy would be the main ones. But just as it's been for the Rangers this season, his play definitely did taper off quite a bit. The last month or so, maybe even a little bit more than that. And he's missed some time, right? He hasn't been in there. He's been mostly healthy. But Carson Soucy this season, 3 goals, 5 assists, 8 points, and a +4 in 46 games. So, the Islanders get a player that does have some playoff experience, 3 separate playoffs with Minnesota, 2018, 2020, 2021, played 4 games each in those, seasons. So not a whole lot, but then with Seattle, 14 games in 23, and then with Vancouver, 12 games in 24. So, it's surprising to see the Rangers and Islanders making a trade. I believe it's only the 4th time that those two have been involved in a deal, and I think they've all been fairly inconsequential. I think the most recent one was a 2010 trade, which I don't even remember. And it was the Rangers were the one that acquired the player. It was for a 6th round pick. And I don't really honestly ever remember that player playing a game in the NHL for the Rangers. So anything goes back all the way to the 70s before that, as far as the other trades between the Rangers and the Islanders. So Carson Soucy gets to stay in the area again for the end of the season, right? He becomes an unrestricted free agent at that point. So we'll see where he goes. Hey, maybe somehow things work out with the Islanders and he stays there. The funny thing is that with the upcoming schedule, Carson Soucy's first games as a New York Islander will be against the Rangers because they have a back-to-back Wednesday, Thursday. The first game at UBS Arena, and then Carson Soucy will make his return to Madison Square Garden on Thursday. So just weird kind of how that works out. And yeah, look, at the end of the day, I am very much okay with, getting a 3rd-round pick back in this deal. Like, that was kind of the bar that I had set, where if it was below that, I was going to be a little bit disappointed. If it was above that, I was going to be pretty happy. And here, just content with it. Like, this was the bare minimum of, I think, what you wanted. And hey, it's in this year's draft, which is good, right? You don't have to wait till 2027. It's 2026, a 3rd-round pick that you figure, with the Islanders somewhere in the middle, right? Somewhere in that middle range of the 3rd round. So, Rangers have had certainly trouble drafting. So that's another story for another day. But just in terms of the value, not horrible. And, it kind of ends up being just a break even with Carson Soucy and the deal they made where they got it for Vancouver. And now they move him over to the Islanders. So a unique trade in the sense that it's between the Rangers and the Islanders, right? I think that's what kind of gives this trade a little bit more intrigue than your normal one, right? Because we're going to talk about a lot, look, at the very least, Artemi Panarin, like there is bigger trade discussions to be had. But as I had said, it kind of felt like Carson Soucy might be the first one to go, and that's exactly what happens. And so now on defense, for the time being, Vakanainen is going to be the one that is going to play a lot more now. And as well, presumably Matthew Robertson is someone that's going to play a lot more in terms of really being in that top 4 legitimately, where Vakanainen will be in the 3rd pair, Robertson the 2nd pair. So those are the two that come to mind as far as really being the benefits of this deal as far as playing time. But again, a lot can still happen between now and then, right? Like who knows, with Vakanainen, I don't think he's exactly someone that the Rangers have a whole lot of confidence in currently. The difference is, though, is that he's under contract next season. So it is in their best interest to try to maybe make something work of that, but we'll see. And then, not for nothing, Connor Mackey, he gets called up and is now currently the 7th defenseman. So maybe finally now all it takes is kind of just an injury on that left side or even right as well, depending on what they want to do. And Connor Mackey now could join, the active lineup. He's been a healthy scratch whenever he's been called up. So yeah, again, that's kind of the ramifications and the fallout on the defensive side. Carson Soucy being traded to me, it's not going to really have that much of an effect on the Rangers. Like, again, it's preferable they lose games. I think trading Carson Soucy, like that's not really going to move the needle a whole lot. You can kind of make that work. I mean, sure, is Vakanainen worse than Soucy? Yeah, I would say so, certainly based on what we've seen this season, but still, you can cover that up a little bit. So, again, Carson Soucy, who had, only just the 1 year left on the deal, unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. Rangers last year at the deadline got him from Vancouver. They traded away a 3rd-round pick. Well, in essence, they get a 3rd-round pick back from the New York Islanders in this upcoming draft. 3rd-round pick, Carson Soucy, traded for the Rangers to the Islanders in the first trade of what will hopefully be many until the trade deadline for the New York Rangers.